Latvia Weekly interviews with Joe Horgan and Otto Tabuns. Labdien VCM, and welcome to a very, very special episode of Latvia Weekly. So I'm Joe Horgan, as mentioned in the credits, and normally when you listen to this podcast, you hear myself and Otto Tabuns and sometimes some other people like Carlos Drapes or Olaf Nickars talking about the news of the week. But we also, from time to time, do interview episodes, and it has been quite a hot minute since we have done one of those, partially just because I've been very, very busy with work and life and everything. And we are finally doing our first interview episode in quite some time. This is our first Facebook Live interview episode as well, and this will also be on YouTube for those of you listening to the audio version of this. And I have the pleasure of being joined once again, not only for the second time by Mr. Kristaps Andrejsons, but at a very kind of exciting time right now, not completely in a positive way, because I think I can say in a nutshell, Kristaps, that it has been a little bit of a rough month for you. Would you concur with that?
Things have happened, interesting things. But yeah, managed to catch the COVID-19 virus, live through that, and then apparently some Russian trolls don't understand how humor and comedy work, or parodies in general.
Yes, exactly. But we are here on International Workers' Day, so I am once again with a non-alcoholic beverage. For those of you who listened to the episode yesterday that we recorded, I drank an entire bottle of Mezőzér all by myself. Now I am drinking kvass, and Kristaps is also drinking something as well. We are celebrating International Workers' Day. So before we begin, can we say a quick cheers, Preka, Kristaps?
Preka!
Yes. So,
International Workers' Day is a special day for my podcast, if you think about it, because this is about the time when I started thinking about it. This is when this is very close to the birthday of my show. About this is when I started thinking about working on my show. So, well, for me, International Workers' Day is something that is cherished and valued. So.
Before we get into kind of the crazy things that have happened to you over the last month, we might explain really quickly what International Workers' Day is. It's very interesting because my home country of America is its origin. Okay, so May 1st each year is International Workers' Day. We have a different Labor Day that we celebrate nowadays, and that is the first weekend or the first Monday, basically, of September.
Oh, really?
Yes. So we don't celebrate.
Well, I actually thought that your Labor Day was this.
No, this is nothing in America. So, and it's very interesting how this kind of diverged. But I wanted to ask you real quick, Kristaps, because I've asked this to. We talked about this last year on the show because there has been some talk about moving this official holiday, because the 1st of May is an official holiday here in Latvia, so there's no work, at least in public institutions and places that normally have bank holidays. There's been talk about moving this instead to the 11th of November, which is a much more patriotic Latvian holiday. It's the anniversary of a major battle in the Latvian War of Independence, because there is this kind of mindset among a lot of people that the 1st of May is kind of a Soviet thing. It's kind of left over from Soviet times, but that's not really the case at all. What's your take about this, Kristaps? As somebody who, which by the way, I didn't really introduce you properly. You are the host of the Eastern Border podcast, which looks at Soviet history and also Russian current events as well.
See, International Labor Day, like you said, it originates in the United States, and I think it starts in the so-called Gilded Age, if I'm not mistaken, about that period of time. The thing is that this is not a Soviet day. It's just the time when, the Industrial Revolution happened, and this is the day where workers realize that they have some rights. This is a day that the Soviets sort of usurped, in a way. They took it over. But it's not a Soviet holiday. This is just the day where you basically celebrate the fact that, well, all the workers that make the world run, well, just they should be united.
Yeah.
Because technically this is the International Workers Solidarity Day.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, the official term is. and I don't see anything bad in that. Now, whether or not the 11th of November should be a holiday, I think that it should be a holiday in Latvia, 11th of November, because that's where most serious battles happened. But it should not happen as an expense of 1st of May. 1st of May is it's a historic day. Specifically, it's also means a lot in Latvia. If you look at the history of like the 1905 revolution, which
Hmm.
was a major event here, and a lot of people died. And the 1st of May back then meant a lot of things, so that's important. But I don't know. I don't know if we can afford another day off as a holiday in Latvia, but I think that we should try to squeeze in the 11th of November. How we will do that, no idea though.
Hmm.
But I don't think that the 1st of May should be sacrificed. Even though, then again, well, today specifically in the COVID epidemic, doesn't feel like much of a different day from all the others. Everyone still is like locked in their homes anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of COVID, so the kind of beginning of your crazy, insane month, or I don't even know if it's a month. I can't even keep track of time anymore, really. But I remember that you made a kind of a series of posts on your Facebook page, which is always a very lively
Yep.
place for all kinds of debate and all kinds of interesting thoughts. And you basically hinted that you may or may not be suffering from the COVID-19 virus, and then from what I understand, that you did end up testing positive. And what in the world has that experience been like? Because I know that specifically for you, you know. When we hear about COVID, the biggest risk group are older people, which you're not. We're both about the same age, and we're not that old. But people with pre-existing conditions, which both of us more or less are, and you specifically more than me. I mean, I have a few, quote unquote pre-existing conditions, but you've outdone me in that category, I think. So can you take me through this whole situation? Because you're pretty much my only friend who's really gone through this kind of firsthand.
Well, it feels like a really terrible flu, which I thought I had, but then I went to the hospital in Rezekne, and turns out that well, I am that confirmed case there, because well, I stayed at home, and I think that I didn't really make anyone else, so I isolated as much as I could from everyone, but I had like a massive temperature spike, like my household also probably got through this, but with less symptoms because everyone had a massive temperature spike, but really dry cough, massive temperature spike, and kind of like this hardness of breathing. Like lungs got hit real bad, and I had a really high blood pressure as well. So my heart went undergone a lot of things, and I had the heart issues after that as well. But it really hits you that well, I fainted twice because of like the blood pressure was not sufficient enough to kind of circulate oxygen throughout my body, and I had like a lot of difficulty breathing, a ton of difficulty breathing. It really hits your lungs, and I can see how people who had like even more like issues with their lungs that I did, they could just you basically just stop breathing, and that's why all those kind of those artificial lungs are so important because it hits your breathing and but you don't have any like you don't have a runny nose or anything. You don't have your traditional stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. So what was the reaction of people when they found out? Of course, at least on your Facebook page, I saw the reaction that we all had was "Get better soon, please." And because you have quite a few followers and friends on Facebook. But what was the reaction of your family, of your friends in Ludza, for example? I mean,
Oh no, I haven't really been out about. That's not the thing that I try to talk about in Ludza because this is a very small town, and I really hope no one from Ludza is watching this.
ooh, oops.
They probably aren't though. Ludza is a very small town, and I doubt people even know what podcasts are, so it's fine. But reaction is normal from my family. Well, a lot of them had a high temperature, and some people think they might have just gotten this asymptomatic version of it, but no one knows.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone was like super supportive. That COVID part was actually kind of just hurting me more than like in a mental sense because you know it's kind of like when I got my appendix removed. One of the things that has happened to so many other people that you never expect would happen to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you kind of get something yourself, and then it's kind of like, wow, well, this is a pandemic. If this would be like medieval era, I would be dead, which is well, not really funny, but just shows how much medicine has changed and how we react to all these things.
Yeah, and this is something. I mean, I'm pretty sure that you've talked about. Well, actually, no, you just had a episode. And definitely, if you guys haven't checked out Kristaps' podcast before, definitely go check out the Eastern Border podcast. It is absolutely fantastic. It's very, very informative, both about Soviet history and also about current events that are happening in this region of the world. But you did a very interesting issue about pandemics, specifically about some of the different pandemics that have happened, throughout the period of Soviet history and even a little bit before that. So I don't know. Did you feel some kind of extra solidarity? After. It sounds like got a bit of a helicopter. I'm going to mute him for just a second, but hopefully he can still hear me right now. Hopefully they're not searching for you right now, Kristaps. Anyway, did you, what was his experience of kind of, putting together this episode about pandemics and about, these outbreaks of diseases as you're kind of experiencing something similar in a modern day version, yourself?
Oh, it was really fun because I just love feeling miserable. No, it was actually kind of weird because, well, never done something like that before, and I thought, well, hey, might as well,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of that stuff was like really, well, hushed in the Soviet era, which again struck me as weird because those are the things specifically about the fact that there was a cholera epidemic and then there was this diphthery thing
Yeah.
that, yeah, there were those epidemics in Soviet era and they were like totally hushed out from the public. And And one thing that really strikes me as very odd right now is I follow all these Russian news, right? And just as those epidemics and all those issues were kind of hidden from the public and not reported in the news back in the Soviet era, same as what, like right now, there are three cities where massive protests against this sort of fake quarantine, not official quarantine, but like this fake thing that Putin has implemented are happening. Yakutia, North Ossetia, and Vladikavkaz, and they're just being hidden out, and like nothing is about them on the mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
Like it still is going on. The thing that they're hiding the information from the people because they are so afraid of their own people. Okay, and that just struck me, and I criticize my own government a lot, and I have a lot of bad things to say about it. But I at least can respect the fact that no one is trying to, hide the reality from Latvians.
Yeah. And that gets into the question of censorship, hiding the reality. And that is something that you've also experienced firsthand in a very kind of ironic way, because one of the, for anybody who's listened to your last few episodes, but, really your episodes in the last, year or two, they've taken a more of a focus on Russian current events and specifically about the Russian media and the rhetoric that's been happening in the Russian media. And,
Yeah, because
yeah, oh,
because I
sorry,
like
go
I
on.
like to say that I like to say because I post more Russian current news episodes because I believe that a new revolution is happening there, that something big is about to happen, and that I don't want to miss out on stuff. And a lot of people just, whenever they read something on like BBC or like some sort of CNN or some other place, they come to me with questions about it. And there's so much things happening in Russia right now, and people kind of just ask me to speak about them, so I do.
Mm-hmm.
That is why I'm doing this more current news stuff. It will end at some point. I mean, like I will not do current Russian news forever. I want to dig more in Russian in Soviet history, but as of right now, I feel like it's an obligation of mine to
Yeah.
continue on with this. But I know what you're bringing on, so like I'm gonna just explain this to the listeners now. The thing is that I made an episode where I basically spoke about how people in Russia blame COVID-19 on evil Westerners, and it's a Trump conspiracy and evil bioweapons and all that stuff. So I commissioned a friend of mine who's a designer on my show to draw a drawing because they're all inside these conspiracy theories about who's really to fault for all the bad stuff in Russia.
And I'm just going to put it on the screen right now, just so people, for those of you watching
Yeah,
the YouTube or the Facebook version of this, you can take a look. So this is the picture
yeah.
that he's talking about, right
So I
from his Facebook
commissioned a
page.
caricature, and what you're seeing here is that drawn by Elina Brastli, a professional artist who won like the design of the coin of the year and children's book illustration of the year, and that's a gay, Jewish, vegan, intellectual, Freemason, add in hipster, libertarian, add in like every conspiracy ever. Like it's an amalgam of every conspiracy theory, everything ever, funded by the United States of America, of course, that's beating down on Russia. Because that's kind of like how Russian propaganda portrays everything happening, right? They blame everything for everyone except themselves. And so I I described this to my friend, and she drew it. And I posted that on Facebook as a mockery of Putin's propaganda and explained it very well as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I posted that on kind of on all sorts of sites. I don't really post on like pro Putin sites because I don't want to drag myself in flame wars. But this was posted on a Facebook group called Anti-Vatniki, or anti-Vatniks, those anti-Putin things, where a lot of Ukrainian news gets posted, where a lot of people from Russia who are dissatisfied with Putin post, a lot of Navalny supporters, stuff like that, And there apparently this picture gained about like 60 shares and about 300 likes, quite a lot, for a picture. And after this happened, I got a message from Facebook saying that, hey, this has been reported as hate crime against Russia.
Yeah. And
then it was
irony
banned because like by Russian, well, and then I got like angry emails too by Russian trolls because obviously I have so offended people with this. It's like, and even though I know that our buddy, both our like friends, Carlos Strapes, he also looked at the same image and didn't find it offensive. A lot of other like my Jewish friends have also shared it. One of them on Eastern Border Group stated, "Hey, where did you get the likeness of me?" A lot of people have been taking this in good humor because they understand the meaning of this. Meanwhile, Russian trolls got so offended they flagged this for hate speech, which is, like you said, ironic because it technically just proves that whatever Putin's propaganda is putting out is hate speech, because this is what they're doing. So yeah, and now I was banned from Facebook for a while, and they also managed to get through official channels, no less, in contact with my hosting site, Acast. And now, well, even though Acast admitted that they are in the wrong and they will be restored, well, it's going to take about like a couple of days before I can post my shows again.
And this specifically was if I remember correctly, if the Swedish the Russian embassy in Sweden specifically.
Yeah.
So this wasn't just a bunch of trolls on the internet. This was a government response basically. So
Yeah, Russian trolls, Russian embassy, Russian trolls, Russian embassy, tomato.
Yeah, but no, but when we think of the internet trolls, we usually think of these kind of like disorganized groups of people on all kinds of different websites, Reddit, 4chan, and Facebook, and all kind of all over the place causing trouble. But it really does kind of go to show that when we hear about these troll farms and some of the different things that you report about and that we've also reported about a little bit, in relation with how it works in Latvia, there really is this this connection, and I'm curious to see what you think about this, Kristaps, because when when I first heard about this and when you first told me about this, I don't see this necessarily as just a bunch of people got offended and they wrote in. You are obviously on their radar. You've gotten threats before. You aren't kind of this small fish. Do you think that?
Oh wait a second. Oh no, put yourself on the screen for a bit because I need to turn off the video for a second.
Okay. Well, Kristaps,
I'm just sorry, like, dear listeners, I'm here. It's just that I am really lagging if I have video on, so I'll just turn off the
no,
video.
your video is working fine for us. Your video is working fine for us.
That's for you. For me, it's really lagging,
Okay.
and you're like 2 seconds behind with the audio. So I'll
Okay.
just turn off the video for now.
Okay.
I'll just switch to my house's. I'm on my balcony, so we'll just switch to Wi-Fi, and that'll be better.
Okay.
Just give me a sec.
Yeah, but anyway, if you can still hear us, I'm wondering what you think. I mean, do you really see this as just kind of this, people got offended and they wrote in and they really felt bad about this? Or do you see yourself as, being on their radar, which I know that you are? I know that you've gotten threats before even. And do you see this as an attempt to somehow silence you even, potentially?
Oh, obviously, this is Prigozhin's troll farms. in St. Petersburg. They make about 700 euros per month, which is really a lot of money for Russia. And they just do their jobs. And some of them have even like emailed me. It's totally fine. I mean, they do that for everyone. They also get hired because recently one thing that I did is that I have a personal feud with Dmitry Solovyov, the chief propagandist of Russia, and he opened a YouTube channel, and that guy has been like in all the very paid for state TV channels. But what I did is like I found his YouTube channel, and then I posted to my listeners about how he's made a YouTube channel, and there are no positive comments on that site whatsoever. Okay, so we what we did was like we sent we review bombed him. We sent reports because he's literally saying things like "nuke United States" daily. He's a massive pile of hate, uh, and and I guess that kind of counteracted things. He buys the trolls to give him likes because even before his shows air, he is like a 6,000 likes, 3 dislikes ratio, which is surreal. So I just believe that this happened as a retaliation, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, because the irony, that image is considered a like a hate speech or a hate crime, considering some of the legitimately shocking things that you hear in certain parts of the Russian media, which we've reported about it on the show before. I mean, it's been the basis of certain Russian media channels being blocked, at least temporarily in different Baltic states or different European countries. So the irony here is not certainly not lost on me, and I'm sure it
I
wasn't.
mean, I mean, I mean, I mean, you're a fascist. I'm a fascist. Your neighbors are fascist. Everyone's fascist. Like, but at some point, everyone in the Baltics has been called a fascist. All of us, real fascists included. But
Yeah.
like, like their idea is kind of weird. And one thing that I want to touch upon is like I read an interview with a kind of Russian goalkeeper who's also has won the Stanley Cup, by the way. He's won the Stanley Cup, and he basically stated that Russia has this. A lot of people call it "победобесие." That's the Russian term, which basically states pissed off about winning.
Mm-hmm.
Because for them, this victory in World War II means everything. Because they have like nothing else to show for themselves. Everything else is in ruins, so Putin just plays up this victory in World War II, and they're going to have a massive parade despite the coronavirus and all that stuff, right? And 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 the guy stated correctly that well, the state that actually beat Nazis died 30 years ago, and it was all Soviet republics, including Latvia. By mind you, a lot of Latvian people also fought for the Red Army. So they're just obsessed with this end of the World War II like so much, and due to this coronavirus, they even moved their total end date for World War II from the 2nd of September to the 3rd of September.
Mm-hmm.
And this is important. You know why? Because it happened a day later in the USSR, even though that didn't happen. That happened within 8th and 9th of May, but no one cares. They moved this because in 2004, in September the 3rd, in Beslan, there was a massive tragedy in like, this was just 5 or 4 years after the Second Chechen War, and 113 children were kidnapped by Chechen terrorists. And instead of saving those children, Russian Spetsnaz blew up over 100 children together with the terrorists because
Jeez
they
Louise.
didn't care.
Yes.
And now they officially, as a state law, have changed the end of the World War II from 2nd of September to 3rd of September because of no real investigation and no real responsibility for the deaths of all these children, because the terrorist demands were basically free political prisoners and let's sort this out like in the court. That never happened. Explosives where children were like Russian Spetsnaz killed all the Chechen terrorists so that no one could go to court and testify, which was their tactics at the time, and they killed over 100 kids with explosives on the 3rd of September. And that date is now the Russia's official date of the end of hostilities, and they switched it so that they could just blur out any memory of the Beslan tragedy where Russian Spetsnaz killed over 100 kids in total mishandling of their situation, just so they could have a nice parade and no one would remember about this, just so Putin would look nice. Okay?
Jeez. Yeah.
These heavy, blatant, stupid things because I keep in touch with those mothers of Beslan, because, due to Politkovsky and all these things. These things are the heavy stuff that I talk about, and right now they're all like acting up, because right now there are, like I said in the beginning, massive protests in 3 cities of Russia, and no one's talking about it. And, well, one of my shows is quite popular because a lot of Russian people who know English, they check in on this show because I'm the only one who just translates all the opposition media into English. And I think this is why I must continue my show, because otherwise things will just keep on happening as they will, and I just live like 20 kilometers from the Russian border right now, and I just believe that, well, my family members also live in Russia, and I just think it's important to carry on, so just laugh at the face of these kind of ironic attacks, because that's not the most horrific things that they do, man. It's really not.
No, definitely not. But I mean, do you feel, I don't know, a little bit more worried? Because the last time we talked on the show, we discussed some of the, threats that you've gotten before, threats that family members have gotten, and you've lost, certain friendships over this, or relationships. Are you any more nervous than you were before? That you could be in any kind of danger?
Yes, but then I'm gonna have a massive toothache, so that takes away like at least 50% of my brain power.
Yeah.
Like, if I wouldn't be in terrible pain, like right now, then I would probably worry about it more. But right now, the only thing I can care about is the fact that all of this side of my face, it's exploding inside.
Oh my gosh.
So, no, things happen. But then again, it's better to worry about a toothache than, the fact
Yeah.
that I live literally 20 kilometers from Russia.
You,
And
I,
this is
I,
happening.
I hate to say it, Kristaps, but out of all the people I know, if there was one person I would not be surprised that would get coronavirus, it's you. I mean, you have had the worst luck with injuries and illnesses over the last year. You've fallen into manholes. You've, had toothaches. You've had heart problems, lung problems. I mean, you are
The thing
like,
is, I believe that there is this quality that I have. It's called jinxed. The thing is that just with this podcast, I don't know, it's kind of metaphysical, but I get the worst. I have like the worst luck in 90% of the cases, but in the rest of, like, in those 10%, when I don't have the worst luck, I have this extremely like critical success rolls and everything. So I can either fail terribly or achieve enormous success.
yeah.
So I believe that this is kind of a luck tax that I pay for, for all the good stuff that I've gotten to.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a whole ton of time left, unfortunately, but I would like to switch to a slightly kind of a nicer topic before we close out, and that is that spring is here. We're officially in spring. We are now officially 1st of May.
Oh! If you're talking about spring, do you listen to Tom Lehrer sometimes?
Not very much, unfortunately. No.
Oh well, you should listen to his song. Well, that's a guy from the 50s, America,
Mm-hmm.
who wrote like very cheerful songs. Cheerful in the sense of very creepy. His best song about spring is "Poisoning Pigeons in the Park." It's great. I
Okay.
highly recommend it.
Okay.
Well,
Well.
he was like one of those 50s. He played piano and all those on those 50s shows, and then he just played his songs in a super happy tune. But then he just had like these very somber topics. Like
Yeah.
his song about spring is like, spring is here, spring is here, happiness and luck and everything's beer. And now what's my favorite thing to do in spring? Well, of course, it's poisoning pigeons in the park.
Oh my
And
gosh,
he's
I have to look this up later. I haven't heard this song before, but
it's
um,
Tom Lehrer,
yeah.
and it's just on the 50s, and it's like black and white cinema, and it's one of those talk shows. It's just great. It's one of the best American media from the 50s that I know. And if when you say spring is here, I just hear the lyrics from this "Poisoning Pigeons in the Park" song by Tom Lehrer. It just is it's part of the existence.
You are a
That's,
dark messed up person, Kristaps, unfortunately. But um,
no, I'm not. I'm a very positive person, actually.
you're very
I just like
positive as well. You're very positive as well. Yeah.
I like dark topics. I like
Yeah.
dark topics sometimes, but just that the thing I deal with the darkness surrounding me and all the bad stuff by just laughing at it, laughing about it.
That's a very Latvian thing. That's a very Latvian mentality because all Latvian humor is very dry, very dark,
Right.
and it's I think it's my favorite kind of like national humor that I've seen. But you are in Ludza, which is deep, deep, deep in Latgale, which is the eastern region of Latvia. It's one of the reasons why your podcast is called the Eastern Border. So what is spring like right now? Can you show us on your phone maybe for those of you watching the video version of this?
Well,
Looks like a nice day.
I am quite. Uh, let's see now. Oh, this is my humble balcony with all the dirty laundry, which you can like see right now. Awesome.
Yeah.
This is the park street with all the Khrushchevkas, but it's approximately this.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah. Are people kind of out and about on the street right now in Ludza, or are people taking
No,
the?
this is about the default of like I mentioned in your students podcast. No,
Mhm.
no, no, this is default Ludza. Like Ludza is one of those places where only about 8,000 people live in here,
Yeah.
but it's very spread out. Like we don't have any of those like Khrushchevkas or anything. We have about like three of them. So everyone lives in these like either on their private houses or like maximum story, 3 story high, well 4 story high maybe buildings. So Ludza
Yeah.
is very wide, so to say. It takes up a lot of space for a very low population, so population density is super low. So you really don't see a lot of people out on the street with cars or anything, really.
Just to give a little bit of background, by the way, when he's talking about Khrushchevkas for our listeners who are not so familiar with Latvian or Soviet architecture, so Khrushchevkas were these mostly 4 to 5 story house buildings that were usually like 1, 2, maybe 3 room apartments, and they were prefabricated either out of bricks or panels, and they were built all over the Eastern Bloc, and they are found all over the
Oh,
place. And
and by the way, they are based on an American design. Even those were stolen
yeah.
because they were based upon the buildings that in the United States were built as temporary housing for when Alaska became a state, you wanted like people to move in there. So the Americans built something like Khrushchevkas there as temporary housing for people to move in and then build some more permanent stuff. But the Soviets took it over and then they built that stuff as well, whatever.
Well, yeah, well, because there was a massive housing shortage, obviously, after the Second World War. And from what I understand, the idea was to put up as many of these as possible. They were only supposed to last about 20, 30 years because the idea was that by 1980, communism would be achieved and that there would be no more housing shortages. Am I correct in this?
Well, obviously we live in communism right now.
Yeah. Well, it was the idea at the time. It was the idea at the time. But yeah, I mean, I've lived in
Yeah.
Khrushchevkas, but a lot of them actually, there was a lot of building material at the time. So they, some of them are in pretty good shape, at least the ones out of brick. Uh,
A lot of them are also kind of like a lot of people have taken care of them, and a
mhm,
lot of them have been like insulated
yeah.
from the weather, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, a lot of them have been renovated. So, anyway, when are you going to be back on the air? So your podcast you can't upload at the moment. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on my show so that you can say something to your listeners as well and be able to connect with the world. But when can we expect the next
I
Eastern Border episode?
I think that they tell me in Acast that it should be done by Monday. So
Hmm.
realistically by Wednesday, because one, I don't believe it's going to be done by Monday, and two, I have like work to do to finish up my episode and stuff, which I'm going to do right now. But realistically, Monday to Wednesday, somewhere around that part. Well, let's take the worst case scenario, Wednesday. Wednesday's when the boats do come up.
Hmm. Yeah, because you're doing an episode about a spy cruise boat, which is absolutely fascinating. You should definitely, guys, listen
Oh,
to the first
but
episode, the first
it is
version of this.
so hard to make any sense of it. The story is great. The thing is that the guy writes his memoirs, and he used to be he was a double agent. He worked for both the KGB and the West German spy agency, right? But he writes his memoirs about his time when he was serving as a mechanic on this Leningrad to Montreal cruise, where he was this double agent, and that's interesting, right? But
Mhm.
he writes everything in detail. He writes everything from the first person. He just writes out all the dialogues. It is just so raw. You can read it as a book, but to transfer it in a coherent story, it's just awful. Like the subject matter is great, but the material I have to work with literally fries my brains.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the case with a lot of, as somebody who is also poured over primary sources as well, for different history projects I've had back in, my bachelor studies a million years ago. Some of these memoirs, they're important to understand, but they weren't necessarily gifted writers. Not everybody was able to hire some good ghostwriter to to help them make it sound somewhat readable. That's the case with a lot of memoirs,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So anyway,
Yeah.
Kristaps, thank you so much for joining us. Is there any kind of last words you'd like to say to both our viewers and also or listeners and your listeners as well who might be joining us here right now?
Yeah, it's kind of cold. No, no, seriously though. Very nice to be here. And check out Eastern Border. Thanks, Joe, for having me on again. And well, we still have that civil defense show that we need to work on. I'm reading that book, besides other things, but we have a civil defense show coming on both of our channels because it must be done. It's a great book, and well, we owe that much to you.
Yes, we're going to do a collaborative episode sometime this summer about Soviet and American civil defense, which was my bachelor's thesis theme, so I can finally talk about it again after many years. But anyway, thanks again, Kristaps, and thanks to all of you who are watching, listening. You can subscribe to our Facebook page where you can see these episodes live, both our normal episodes and some of our interview episodes as well, and your favorite podcast app as well. You can also hear Stories of the Day every day, thanks to Carlos and Andrew. And yeah, thanks again to everyone. And until next time, Visu Labu Visium.